Hello and welcome to the No Balls Podcast. I'm your host Patrick McDonald, with me co-host Finn McDonald. Today we are going to be reflecting on my 2024 predictions list on who was going to be the best players for the 2024 season. I made a top 100 list, which is pretty daunting, and it's hard to get a top 100 right. Quickly, before we do that, I did have some bold predictions that I made earlier and also before the season started. I want to go over those first because I hope I did well on those. I might not have done great on the entirety of the top 100 list. Either way, I have 10 predictions on a scale of 1 to 5, 3 being neutral, 1 being horrible, 5 being excellent. I'm going to have you grade these picks. Okay? All right. Number 1, the Tigers win the AL Central.
Two.
A 2? Okay. Can I argue for a 3 here?
Yeah, you can.
So, going into the season, this was a division that was pretty up for grabs. Consensus was either Guardians or the Twins were probably going to grab it. And people were kind of hip to the Tigers. I would say the Tigers were better this season than general consensus thought they were going to be. Although I still think I'm fine with the 2 rating there. Yeah. It's up to
Honestly,
you
the
if it's
two
a
is
2 or
because,
3.
like you said, they were better than consensus, and they just didn't have the pitching to go up against a Cleveland, a Minnesota, heck, even a Kansas City.
Yeah. So you're more or less saying, like, yeah, sure, they were pretty close, but talent-wise, they weren't that close, actually.
Exactly.
So you're like, yeah, sure, they got close, but you think they maximized pretty much what they could have been this season. I think I generally agree with that. Okay,
And
this,
I could kind of see it. That's why I did not give you a 1.
yeah, I agree. I think that's actually a really good grade. My number 2 one kind of goes off the number 1 take. Riley Green takes a huge leap forward and is in contention for the batting title.
Put 1 there. 1 is just
You're gonna
bad.
go, okay. Well, here, I think this one is halfway right and halfway wrong. Because Riley Green did take a huge step forward. I was right
I
on that
agree there, but he
aspect.
was nowhere near the batting title.
Yeah. So it's like, he
Eh,
was closer last year to the batting title than he
that's
was this year.
maybe that's a 3 because you were right. You're halfway
Yeah, I think,
right, halfway wrong.
yeah, this one's hard for me because, sure, I was right in the aspect of I predicted him taking a step forward, but I added the batting title part there. And I think that was, I don't know. I did have a good reasoning for having Riley Green close to a batting title, but I think a 3 here is a good ranking. I agree. Oh, I lost the bold predictions. All right. I'll screenshot it in case I lose it again. Number 3, MVPs this season are Judge and Fernando Tatis.
That's another. Actually, I'll go a 4 on that one because you got Judge right, and Tatis did have a good year.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about this one. For me, getting one MVP right kind of guarantees for me that it has to be at least a 3. Because like it's really hard to predict the best player in the league for that individual season. I think I like the 3 or 4 here. I'll leave that up to you.
I gave you a 4.
Okay, that's good because I'm gonna need it with this next take. It was man, and we're definitely going to probably talk about it in the actual lists. I said there is a incoming 35 home run season from Nolan Gorman. For context, he ended this year with 19. It was in around 400 plate appearances, so he didn't get a full season, but he was at 19. Ended up getting sent down to the minors this year. I'll let you go ahead and grade this one.
If
Yeah,
you get a 1,
I think a 1 there is I agree. Number 5 for me. One of the Cy Youngs this season will be a completely out of the blue Cy Young pick. A Kevin Gausman type Cy Young season, even though Gausman didn't win the Cy Young. I don't know, Finn. I'll let you grade this one, and I'll get my comments out.
actually, I'm gonna go with 5 on that one because I think both kind of were.
That's what I was gonna say. Like Sale coming off never being at that level. I mean, he had been, but in 5 years, and his career arc was trending down. And then Tarek Skubal was like the 5th guy in the American League for a lot of people. I feel like I hit this one on the head here.
With Scooball, I thought he would take a step forward, maybe be an all-star, but Cy Young, I didn't know if it would be that good. 3 years in a league with Corbin Burns.
Yeah, I feel like if Skubal had just won the Cy Young, it would have been like a 4. But Skubal was so much better than people thought he was going to be. You know what I mean? Maybe I'm grasping at nothing there, but I feel like if this was right, it would have been a 5 anyway, and then I was kind of double right. So I'll take my wins when I can because that Gorman one was tough. This one, I don't know how to go with this one because I'm just trying to predict a single award, and I said Jordan Lawler for the Diamondbacks was going to win Rookie of the Year. For context, it was I thought he was gonna get more run than he did. He didn't make a major league appearance this season.
I have to go null and void, cannot count the prediction because he didn't play.
Yeah. So we'll leave this one out. You're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. This one, yeah, it didn't hit well. It was close. 3 NL Central teams make the playoffs. Let me talk about this one a little bit more. I was more or less saying that I think this NL Central division is a lot better than people are giving it credit for. I really believed in Chicago. I really believed in Cincinnati. And I thought between Milwaukee, St. Louis, and Pittsburgh, one of those teams was also going to be really good. 3 NL Central teams make the playoffs. How do you feel about this grade, Fed?
I'm gonna go with 4 because while only one team made it, 3 teams were over 500.
Okay. I do think that is a fair way to take it
Those
because
being the Brewers, the Cubs, and somehow the Cardinals.
yeah, I because this is a really hard one because one of the teams is guaranteed to make it, but then you look at it the other way. 2 teams have to make 3 spots. 2 of them have to make 3 of the wild card spots. So, yeah,
So the wild card was actually kind of hard to make this year. We saw an
yeah.
89 win team not make it.
hmm
89 win teams usually make the wild card.
So, I feel like in concept I was pretty good here. So, I do like the 3 ranking for that. Best record in the regular season was the Mariners. How do we feel about this prediction, Finn?
You get a 1.
Yeah, I get a 1. Just yeah, I missed that one. This one here, I feel like might balance it out though. Rangers and Diamondbacks missed the playoffs.
You got that right. I gotta give you a 5.
That because that is a bold prediction to say both of the teams in the World Series last season, the season prior, would miss the playoffs. This one, this one I was kind of close on, but I was also pretty far off. Gunnar Henderson goes 30-30 this season. For context, he hit 37 homers and stole 21 bases. I said he would go 30-30. How do we feel about this prediction?
I'll give you a 3.
Yeah. I feel like Gunnar Henderson, I was expecting a big step forward from him. I think I just predicted in the wrong way. I thought he was going to be more of a well-rounded player when he was a slugger. And in concept, I was partially right, partially wrong. So the Tigers one, I think you gave me a 2. Riley Green one, I got a 3. MVPs, you gave me a 4. A 1 for Nolan Gorman. Cy Youngs gave me a 5. I should have been doing the math here. Okay, so 5, 1, 4. That's 9. No, that's 10. Riley Green was a 3. Tigers was a 2.
Yeah, Tigers is a 2.
Okay, so that's 15. Walker we threw out because he didn't play. You gave me a 4 for NL Central. And a 1 for the Mariners.
I give you a 5 for the Cy Young picks, and I give you a 5 for the World Series teams not making it to the playoffs.
Yeah. So that right there is an extra. Wait, that's an extra. So right now I'm at 20, and that was a 5, and that was a 3. So 28 divided by 9. What is that? That's a little over 3. So I did good this season. That's over. That's going positive right there. The year before I had gone -1. Obviously, we didn't have this media platform to do that live, but I had gone -1. I think I went a little more bold this season, and I did better. So I feel like that's really good.
When you go bold, it's usually either a 1 or a 5. You get it right.
Yeah,
Credit to you. You had it totally wrong. You look terrible.
yeah. Because I don't know how. Do we think any of those were safe bets? Let me think. What would have been the safest bet here?
Safest bet here? Honestly, I think that the Cy Young one was a pretty safe bet because I think it would have been at least a 3. I think at least one
Yeah,
of them would have been somebody you wouldn't expect.
yeah, I would agree. Maybe the MVP's one because Judge was kind of the betting favorite, but I don't know. Predicting a MVP is kind of tough, right? Um,
Right.
all right, that'll do it for my bold predictions. Now let's go forward to what is hopefully a positive top 100 list. Finn, you have gone forth and gotten some discussion topics. Um, Let me hear your first one. I'm interested in what it is.
My first one is, why did you have Shohei Ohtani as number 1? knowing that he would not pitch all year. I have
Yep.
several players who I think are better hitters.
Okay. Did you have a question about the number 53 spot on my list?
I did not because I thought those pitchers did deserve a mention.
Okay.
Especially Cole, who did come back and who did provide value. Especially in the postseason.
Okay. I don't think
That
Cole was actually included there, but I
last
get
game
it.
in the World Series, that's just on the defense not showing up.
Yeah. So for context, the number 53 spot for me, I had Jacob deGrom, Brandon Woodruff, Sandy Alcantara, and Shane McClanahan. The rationale behind this was these guys are not going to pitch enough to be even close to top 100 players this season. When they do, I do think these guys are top 50 guys. Like, the information I have says these guys are probably higher than 53. So I wanted to have a mention for them, but I didn't want to put them in the top 50. This is being said, I used similar reasoning on Shohei Ohtani to evaluate him as a pitcher. I figured, hey, when this guy's healthy, he's probably a pretty solid pitcher still, right? More or less, I don't like to predict injuries to happen. I want to predict how good a player is when they're healthy. That being said, I can say, hey, I can cast a little bit of doubt that Ohtani might not come back perfectly from his arm injury, but we've seen it happen countless times that Tommy John, like, sometimes guys don't return to full strength, but a lot of the time guys do. That being said, when Shohei Ohtani is a pitcher and his previous form as a hitter, I felt was probably the best player in baseball. So I wanted to account for that in my rankings. I placed them right ahead of Aaron Judge. I got to pat myself on the back here, Finn. The two MVPs were the top two guys.
I will say I only had two players ahead of him.
Yeah,
Aaron Judge and Mookie Betts.
yeah, for sure. And the base stealing this season was a big thing for Ohtani that hadn't been there before, but I still felt that when he was strictly a DH, he would have been a top 10-ish guy. And since I like to value health, he's gonna be put up at number one for me. Does
I
that
don't
answer
like
your
to
Shohei?
predict injuries, but I do take them into account when I know it. And did you know it when you made this?
Yeah, so we had known for
When
a
did you
while
make
that Shohei wasn't going to pitch, but same thing with my number 53 spot. Like, I do want to acknowledge that, hey, when Shohei is a pitcher, which for every season except this one, he's going to be a pitcher as well. So it's kind of that thing. Like, he's obviously, if he wasn't clearly the number one guy for me, um, then he wouldn't have been number one. He would have maybe been 4 or something like that. Um, but I felt like even taking like a 70th percentile pitching outcome from him, that he would be the number one player in baseball. And until we got more data on his pitching, it would feel wrong for me to move him down just because he currently is facing a Tommy John. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Yeah. I like to assume guys in full health. We'll see that with some other guys that I had ranked on this list. I'm sure you have another question relating to health. Whatever your next topic is, let me hear it.
My next topic is how do you factor in defense? Like, Jordan Alvarez is obviously a better hitter than Lindor, but you have to factor in that Jordan Alvarez is a DH and Lindor is a Gold Glove shortstop.
Mm-hmm. Jordan Alvarez, Freddie Freeman, were kind of like these guys are going to be excellent hitters no matter what, and it's kind of really important that I can acknowledge that I have basically 100% certainty that these are going to be top 4 or 5 hitters in the league every given season, right? Like, that's what the data is showing me consistently. Other guys who play a ton of who play really good defense. Maybe it's up and down whether or not they're a top 30 hitter alone. Yordan Alvarez, Freddie Freeman, I can stamp every season that they're going to be a top 5 hitter in their respective league. That is really valuable to me. Other than that, once it goes down from those guys, like if there's a pure slugger that I have some uncertainty about their bat, specifically I did it on this list, Matt Olson, right? I had some uncertainty about his bat. He got pushed down to 38 for me, right? This is a first baseman. He doesn't bring much besides just that bat. You get pushed down. Matt Olson was a guy who was getting a lot of top 10 looks across the league. I need to be certain with a DH first base type that you are going to bring a lot to the table with the bat. So that's how I generally like to lean on the side of caution with first base DHs.
Oh, 100%. What else do you think I would have been the first one with a pitchfork out to go get the manager that was starting Daniel Vogelbach at DH?
Yeah. And then more with defense, like, hey, defense fucking matters. So among the position players that are position players, I factored that in a ton. It's apparent in the top 10. It's apparent in the top 50. It's apparent in the top 100 that defense really matters for me. So that's if that doesn't answer all of your defense question, let me know.
For like position rankings, how did you decide where like a Ha-Seong Kim, a Triolo, what position did you have them playing for purposes of this rank?
A Jared Triolo reference? Is that what I just heard?
Yeah, that and Ha-Seong Kim.
Well, Jared Triolo was not in consideration. I'll put that out there, although Jared Triolo is a cool player. Ha-Seong Kim, it was announced early on, probably it was after I had made this rankings. But then I adjusted it once it had been announced that he was going to play shortstop. As you can see, like on the list, I do have the position that I ranked them at for most of these players. That was the position that they played this year, and anyway, for a couple players it changed. Brandon Nimmo was one of them. He ended up playing left field. We weren't exactly sure what position he was going to play more at. I had him as a center fielder. Luis Ariz played a lot of first base this season. But Ha-Seong Kim, I knew for certain that he was a shortstop this year, so I ranked him as a shortstop.
Okay, that was basically how did you choose what position to rank utility players as if they deserved to be mentioned?
Mm-hmm. And another thing too, like it's hard to value a guy who has the utility. I think that goes a long way for a lot of teams. Jeff McNeil, I had him at 96. Like, it is valuable that he can go out there. He can play left, right field, third base a little bit. Like, those things do matter. But for more or less, like, I'm taking this from an independent context. Hey, if Jeff McNeil's my second baseman, this is how many players I would take above him. Hey, if Ha-Seong Kim is my shortstop, this is how many players I would take above him. That type of a thing. Although positional utility does definitely matter, it is more within a specific context of a team, and that's not exactly what I was trying to rank on this list. All right, what do you have next?
For your future lists, can you rank Mike Trout in your top 5 anymore? It's sad to say for me, but I no longer can.
Okay, Mike Trout's one that hurt me. I had him at 4. For those wondering, also for those wondering, this list is up on our Instagram. NoBalls_podcast. For me at least, it was very hard for me to leave Trout out of the top 10 last year because, hey, even though he's had his injury struggles, like when he's on the field, he's still producing at an all-time great level, and that was really hard for me to ignore. This past season and in 2023 a little bit, the production was down overall. Because of that, I have something to point to that, hey, there is some doubt about him still being a top 2-3 player when he is healthy, right? Before this, it was like, hey, when he's healthy, he's still like one of the two best guys in the league. But now that there is some uncertainty to poke at there, I doubt Trout will maybe even be in the top 10 for me, because I don't like to predict guys to be hurt, but if I can predict that injuries might play a part in them slowing down playing wise, I have to take that into account. And I had
You
done
know,
that
you
on
have to
this
take
list.
into account that he could even leave center field, and that
Yeah,
takes a good bit out of his value.
certainly. And I did a very similar thing with a different center fielder on this year's list that I hadn't previously done, that I would expect I'm going to do with Trout this year. And then let me clear this up for those who don't know. I have had previous lists for about 2-3 years now. I've been making top 100 lists. Haven't been putting them online. I think this list right here was one that made me realize, hey, I should put my opinion out there. So maybe this list right here I could source as the reason for why this podcast exists. But we're going to continue making these lists, even if this one, I don't know, maybe didn't come out exactly how I would have liked. Did that answer your Trout question? I think probably.
Yes, it did.
Okay. Go forward to the next one. Let me hear it.
How were you looking at someone like a Paul Goldschmidt who absolutely sucked in 2023, but he was an MVP in 22 and was a pretty good player before that season?
Yeah. So for context, I had Paul Goldschmidt at 94. That was a lot lower than consensus. MLB probably had him top 100 or top 50 if I had to guess. A lot of people still had Paul Goldschmidt in top 50 lists. This year, Paul Goldschmidt had a 1.3 WAR on Baseball Reference. Before that, he had a 3.4. His OPS plus went from a 120 in 2023, which you said was horrible. It's fine. And now it's a 98 this past season. For me, I had looked at it like, hey,
That's fine for average MLB player, but first base has to be better than that.
yeah, if your starting second baseman is giving you a 120 OPS plus, you're getting on the top 100 easily, right? I don't know if there was a second baseman that hit this well that didn't make the list. If
But
you're a first baseman,
2023, his stats 2023 for a first baseman were not good.
yeah, they were average first baseman stuff, which doesn't make this list, to say the least. This year, I was like, hey, batted ball numbers in 2023 did look a little bit better than his pure results, but I was like, hey, going into his age 36 season in a pitcher's ballpark, that is probably the reason for his expected numbers not looking so good. Do I really expect this guy to make game-changing results? And I figured I'm going to go ahead and get ahead of the age curve. Off of pure production last year, he was no better than the 60th best player last year. I don't think it'll get much better from here. Let me go ahead and get one that I think should end up at least looking relatively well compared to MLB.com. Because I was like, hey, he'll probably finish as the 80th best player, and I had him at 94. He was probably closer to like the 200th, and I look even better. So to say the least, it's just me thinking that I thought that this was a pretty conservative, maybe even slightly low, if you were going just off the numbers and then taking into account the aging curve. I thought 94 was a perfect place to fall on for Paul Goldschmidt. To further answer your question, MVP caliber 22, really poor 23. Generally, I like to weigh both years pretty evenly. Some 21 stuff is definitely also considered for 2024's list. I don't want to just look at one season. I want to look at a year or two's worth of sample size to just get a little bit more data, because that data is out there for us to look at. And I like to contextualize those 3 seasons with how old the player is, what ballpark they're playing in, any adjustments that are clearly apparent for these guys. And I use all of that collectively to kind of figure out where I feel on a couple players. So hopefully that answered it.
Yeah, it did.
Okay.
My next question is, how do you rank, not just Japanese, but how do you rank international players when you have to take with a grain of salt that they have not pitched or played in the MLB?
Okay, so for this list, I didn't rank any rookies. Or that's not true. I ranked some rookies, but I didn't rank anyone who hadn't played in MLB yet. That was the one rule I wanted to make. For me, I was like, hey, Shota Imanaga, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, these guys are going to be somewhere on this list. It's just I have no idea where on this list they're going to fall. So for me, and I think I'm going to keep this going forward, I'm not going to rank somebody who hasn't pitched or played in general. It doesn't just have to be pitchers. For my list, I'm going to make it to where you have to play in the MLB before I rank you on a top 50 or on a top 100. And I think I did a pretty good job doing it this way last season. Obviously, Shoto Imanaga was definitely a top 100 guy. I thought Jung-Ho Lee probably could have been a top 100 guy. I thought Yamamoto definitely could have been. Those guys ultimately weren't, and I probably would have had those guys around a lot higher than
I
just
think
at 100.
2 of them were at top 100, and one we didn't see enough.
I don't think
I
for
think
Yamamoto even, I don't know if we saw enough.
injuries
Maybe,
played in Yamamoto and Jung-Ho Lee.
yeah, I agree.
We
And I
definitely
feel
saw
like
enough with Shota Imanaga to put him in there.
Imanaga would have been probably a top 100 or a top 50 guy, right? Like, that's how good he was. I figured one of those guys would definitely be that good, but I just wanted to wait for guys to play in the major leagues first, because everybody was going to give Shota Imanaga and Yamamoto their credit. These guys are signing multi-million-dollar contracts coming overseas. Nobody was going to give Patrick Bailey his credit as a top 100 guy. I felt like, hey, I'm going to acknowledge the guys who data-wise look like top 100 guys. All right. Next question.
This is more of a statement. I like how you had a Patrick Bailey on there, because his offense alone might not have had him top 100, but his defense was great.
Yeah,
That's something
and
that I think a lot of people, I'm yelling at you, MLB.com, recognize.
yeah, and prior to this season, Patrick Bailey hadn't really been good enough offensively for consideration. This year he was a little bit better, and let me say, some of the advanced numbers really like Patrick Bailey. And they were like, hey, like, this guy's not as bad of a hitter as his raw offensive numbers say. He ultimately was a step between the two places, between his actual production and his expected production. But I said, hey, with his glove at the premium position of catcher, like, that's going to be a top 100 guy. And I think it paid off for me. He won the platinum glove. I'm on his
Correct.
baseball reference page. It doesn't say he did, but I'm pretty sure he did. He was awesome.
I recall seeing that he did. Oh, and Foolish Bailey made a video on his framing.
Yeah, I believe it.
That was a pretty
Patrick Bailey's
fun watch
awesome.
if you're a baseball guru.
Yeah. All right. I like the acknowledgement for my Patrick Bailey pick because nobody's going to go to bat for Patrick Bailey. All right, Finn. What's next up here?
Next up here is, did you consider 2023 postseason performances in this song?
Not really, to be honest. As somebody who likes to think objectively, there is very little reason to rank guys based off of what they did in 12 games in the playoffs. For some players, most of the league doesn't even make the playoffs. I'd rather use these huge sample sizes that we have of 162 games over multiple seasons than a 12-game sample size over, like 2 weeks, right? I think previously in 21, I think I had Brandon Lau as like a fringe top 30 guy, and like people weren't having it because people being like friends of mine weren't having it just because I think he went 1 for 13 in the playoffs. Oh well, dude, he's a second baseman who's 40% above league average with the bat. Like he's gonna get acknowledgement for me. Um, for the short answer, no. I think there were a couple Rangers players who I had ranked because I had made the top 50 before the playoffs were even done. I finished off the top 100 later in the offseason, probably rearranged some players. Garcia was a guy who I had already in the top 50, right, before the playoffs even happened. Corey Seager I had ranked before the playoffs even happened. And those guys had monster postseasons. I felt a little validated when the postseason happened and they were awesome, but postseason didn't play any effect.
For future top 100s, how would you take into account the down season of Corey Seager? Not down like league wise, but down like Corey Seager standard wise.
Corey Seager. Can I say this? I don't know how much of a down season was. His BWAR was still 5 this year, and 475 plate appearances or at bats. He played in 123 games. He was a little bit worse than he was last year, but he's still a shortstop who's 45% above league average. You know what I mean? Like that's really good. Um, so short answer, I feel like my Corey Seager pick was pretty solid. Even if it was a little bit worse than his 2023 season, that was almost game breaking. Yeah, that answers my Corey Seager question. I feel like.
Somebody like Corbin Carroll, how do you rank him in the future?
Okay, can I talk about how I ranked rookies really quickly?
Yes.
Historically, I've always waited on rookies. Um, so for this past season, I don't know how many people would have had Corbin Carroll as low as 46, but it wasn't that many. I had Corbin Carroll at 46. I had Gunnar Henderson at 43. Just going to throw that one out there because having Gunnar as the better rookie, I feel like was not a very hot take, or was a very hot take at the time. Like, they would have called you crazy if you said Gunnar Henderson. For me personally, like, rookies generally will peak around 35, 40. If I think they are that good. As for going forward, I don't know. Like, players aren't always going to have an MVP season every year, right? If that was the case, every player who had an MVP ceiling would make the Hall of Fame in the first ballot, right? So I'm going to take this with ups and downs. Realistically, Corbin Carroll will probably be in a similar spot. just because, hey, I saw what a struggling Corbin Carroll looked like this season, and it was probably still close to that 46 ranking. So that being said, like I'm not going to be too bashful specifically on his first half. That was really poor for Corbin.
How did you rank relievers?
So for me, did I even rank a reliever?
Like, how do you value relievers?
Okay. I don't think a reliever made my list here. For me, a reliever, I have to have like 100% certainty that you're going to be the best 5 relievers in baseball for me to even consider you. I didn't have that going into the season for any player. I think Emmanuel Clase, Edwin Diaz were my 2 top guys. Emmanuel Clase, hey, if I would have ranked him in the top 100, it would have been a huge win for me. I couldn't get comfortable with it because you look at David Bednar, right? He had been a consistent top 5 reliever or top 10 reliever in baseball for a couple seasons. That's typically like a 2-WAR season, which is borderline top 100. He crashes and burns, and hey, he's a 0. Like he's a negative for the Pirates. That's how I feel about it. I have to have 100% certainty because if you have a poor season for a reliever, like it's going to be nowhere close to a top 100 guy. The standard for relievers to make it on here is really, really tough. So, yeah, that's how I feel about relievers. I do also like to be like pretty relative in ranking guys. For instance, like catchers, on a pure producing WAR standpoint, catchers are not going to ever be even a top 10 guy, right? Adley Rutschman made my top 10 just because catchers, they sit out every 5th game, right? It is physically demanding to play catcher so often that they cannot go out there every day. That being said, I take into account, hey, relative to other catchers, this is how this guy looks. How does this guy look with this first baseman relative to these other first basemen? You know what I mean? I like to exercise similar things with relievers. It's just this year I wasn't comfortable. Going into this year, I wasn't comfortable with any one reliever making this list.
I can respect that. I just noticed that there wasn't any on there, and I wanted to hear the rationale.
Yeah. Not to say that relievers can't make the list, but it's just going to be so hard for a reliever to make a top 100 for me. So that's the reliever debate there. Quickly, I think we're just about up on talking points, right? Okay. Let's go over some of the names on this list. Maybe some with some learning moments for me going forward. To start, at the top, Matt McLain basically got hurt right away. Whatever, I don't even know why I brought him up. There's not much to talk about there. James Outman at 92 for me. For me here, I think I maybe got a little rookie frenzy at the back half of the top 100. I had Evan Carter, James Outman, Patrick Bailey, Matt McLain, who are all 2023 rookies, ranked for me. Getting a little rookie frenzy here. Maybe I gotta wait a little bit on some guys who weren't super standout rookies. That's my James Outman thing, because James Outman, like, this guy was nowhere close to a top 100 player. Like, he might not have been a top 100 player in AAA this year. Like, that's a really rough one. I think it might be the roughest selection on this list. James Outman is. Yeah. Going forward, Ozzy Albies, Finn, what do we think about this Ozzy Albies ranking? I had him at 88 with as the 10th best second baseman.
Honestly, I don't hate that.
Okay,
Only
I
thing
agree.
only thing
Go
I
for it.
think prevented that was he got hurt and he missed time.
Yeah, you're looking at more as a point as I maybe had him too high. Finn, the consensus on Ozzy Albies was like a top 50 guy. Um,
No, I'm looking at it as in like you had him right about where he should have been, and then he got hurt and proved it.
yeah. That being said, like, hey, like it was not popular to have Ozzy Albies in this range. I want to pat myself on the back when I'm right about something. Um, because hey, we're gonna call out when I'm wrong here for sure. I just did it with Outman. Ozzy Albies, like when he played this season, he was not even a top 100 guy. Consensus on him was a top 40, 50 guy. Uh, hit the nail on the head. I had 9 second basemen ranked ahead of him too. Now I don't think I was perfect on those second basemen that I had above him. Edouard Julien, part of the rookie frenzy that I had towards the back half of the list. Some of that does make sense though, because I'm saying, hey, if I think somebody's going to be better, it's probably going to be this younger guy, right? That's generally how I felt about it, but some of that is also like, hey, I need more sample size on these guys because I use that same argument against having Corbin Carroll and Gunner way higher in the list. Maybe with these lower half guys, I need to use some of that slowness, whatever. There's a word for it that's not coming to my head right now. Do you have? I'm sure you're looking at the list. Do you have any certain names that stand out to you here? I see a couple here
Yeah, I
on.
do. Boba shit.
Okay, Bo Bichette. Hey, I feel like having Bo Bichette, with the season he had in 2023 as a non-top 50 guy is like pretty good. Like I don't think that was a very popular thing to say. He ended up having a negative WAR this past season,
That
right?
thing is me patting you on the back for not having him in the top 50. Because the season he had might not even deserve to be in the top 100.
Yeah, so I think it's just a relative win. I think MLB had him as at least a top 40 guy, and I wasn't having that. I was like, no. You look at him, he's barely ever played defense in his career, and I have questions about the bat. It looks progressively worse over a couple seasons in a row, and then yeah, I think I really nailed it with the Bo Bichette placement, even though like he wasn't even a top 100 guy. Like shit just crashed and burned for him. Um, in the 70 or the 80 through 70 range, I have a couple names that I do want to say a couple things on. Luis Arias, again, I'm going to pat myself on the back when I'm right about a guy. Saying a guy who had just won 2 batting titles in a row, and he won this year too as well, right, Finn?
Yeah. It,
Saying a guy who's pretty much a lock to finish close to the batting title isn't even a top 60 guy is like it's pretty bold. I had him at 79. Uh, it's more or less just a conversation of the player value. Like this guy brings you nothing except singles. I think the league kind of turned around on Arias a little bit this season. Uh, not overreacting to his high average every single season. Blake Snell, one that I really missed on. I had him at 78. I think I had with him a little too much concerns about ending totals with him. Uh, Even with a horrible first start, Blake Snell was definitely higher than the 78 mark that I had him at. Um, I could have definitely pushed Snell a lot higher up this rankings. And at the time I made them, he was a free agent. So yeah, that's a rough one. Blake Snell should have definitely been a little bit higher. Jorge Polanco at 76. the result or the thing that I have here, don't rank guys who are going into their first year in Seattle. It's not a good idea. It happened with Jesse Winker. It happened with Eugenio Suarez. It happened with Teoscar Hernandez. Don't rank guys who are about to start their first year in Seattle. It's not going to go well. Jorge Polanco going into this year, I feel like I kind of nailed the spot that I had him ranked in. It's just, it's not going to happen in Seattle. So don't rank him there. Do you have another name here?
Yeah, and I'm going to kind of call you out a little. I think you have a couple of starting pitchers above Max Fried that should not be above Max Fried.
Okay, let me first figure out where I had Max Fried. I had him at 48. Framber Valdez, is that who you're talking about?
Valdez, heck, I think you should have Strider above him, but I could see the argument because of the ERA and the sample size.
Yeah. I don't know. Besides Valdez, I'm sure I had a very good reason for Framber Valdez. I think it was more or less me giving a nod to him, like, hey, like, this guy's been really, like, really awesome and really durable the past couple years, and Max Fried hadn't been so durable, and that was kind of just the edge that I gave to Framber Valdez. Just because, like, hey, I can project that you can handle 180 inning workload every season. Yeah, ultimately, though, I do agree with you. Max Fried was definitely a better pitcher this past season than
I
Framber
also
Valdez.
think he was a better pitcher than Zach Allen.
Zach Gallen, yeah, he was, but I don't think it was that far off.
It wasn't that far off, I'll give you that.
Yeah, and like where I ranked Zach Gallen, I feel pretty confident on. Like I had the right reasoning. It's just it didn't work out this season with Zach Gallen.
I guess
Um,
the difference between me and you is that I really value consistency, and Fried has had a lot of that.
yeah, I agree, and maybe there's some things to be said about the consistency things that I do need to take a little bit more account to because hey, like it burned me with some of the rookie guys. Like I didn't have proof that their consistency exists. They come back, they're not consistent. Surprisingly, like yeah, I agree with you. Um, definitely a lesson to be learned there. Whew. Okay. The two Chicago guys I had in the top 40 range. Do you know? I'm sure you know who they were.
Bellinger and Robert. Or two I wanted to bring up. I think you got those reversed.
Bellinger and Swanson were the two I was actually talking about. These guys just had rough seasons. Not really much I can learn from it. Just they weren't 34, 35, and 36. That's all I'm just gonna mention that. I'll say this: Matt Olson, big dub for me. He might not have even been a top 50 guy this year. I had him at 38. Consensus was like top 10. Nolan Arenado, I think I was about the same as a lot of people. Had him at 39. He was not a top 50 guy this past year. Not much to be said there. Let me see. Okay. Francisco Lindor fan. I think having him at 15 relatively was a good pick. Scoop by that one. Juan Soto, big L for me. I had him at 13. There was reasoning behind that. I didn't think going to New York was going to help him as much as a lot of people thought it was going to. Yeah, he was a lot better than the 13th best player in baseball this year.
I'd like to give you props for a couple of guys that are lower, namely lower but deserve to be in the top 50, namely Pablo Lopez and William Contreras.
Okay, I'm going to decline one of those props because Pablo Lopez was not worthy of being on this list based off of what he did in 24. His prior sample size, right, should have definitely been here. William Contreras, I think having him as the number 3 catcher was like not, or the number 4 catcher was just not a commonly held opinion. I think having him and Cal Raleigh ahead of Will Smith, barely anybody would agree with that. It ended up working out pretty well for me. I don't know if Cal Raleigh specifically outperformed Will Smith, but knowing that William Contreras, like I was pretty confident that he was going to be a better player than Will Smith, and yeah, Cal Raleigh as well was also probably in the same range. William Contreras, Cal Raleigh, I think were slam dunks having them above Will Smith for me.
Ouch,
So
I'll take the Lopez one back. I thought he was better than that by about a 1 ERA.
yeah, Pablo Lopez had a rough season. That one bit me in the ass. Trying to think of any other lessons we can learn from this. Nolan Gorman, okay. I mentioned him. What'd you say?
When it comes to starting pitchers, we need to value consistency.
Yeah, there's a good bit of argument there. Nolan Gorman, we'd mentioned him in my predictions thing. I was just really high on the power. Honestly, I feel like if I was given the same bit of information that I was before the season, I feel like I would do it again. Because there was really nothing saying that he was going to randomly strike out 38% of the time. I don't know if maybe I'm just ignoring an obvious lesson to learn there, but I feel like I would do it again with Nolan Gorman.
I don't see what you're ignoring. And I do need to mention, striking out 38% of the time is terrible.
And almost unheard of.
Can't happen.
Yeah. All right. Do you have any more names here? Because I have a couple more that I'm going to hit on real quick before we get out of here.
Go ahead and hit up.
Okay, Ketel Marte. He had a great season, MVP caliber. I had him ranked 69th. 5th ranked second baseman. I don't know where this power came from. It wasn't there. It's new. It's a breakout. It's a double breakout. He broke out in 2019 with all this power. He didn't show it after that for 4 seasons. Suddenly it's back. I don't know what to do with Ketel Marte. He's definitely going to be ranked a lot higher than 69th. It might be an astronomical jump if I can back it up with some batted ball data. Vlad Guerrero. He did what I expected him to do. Or not what I expected him to do, but what I needed him to do if he was going to be ranked as highly as people like to rank him. I had him at 65th. It was probably closer to 30th, if I had to guess. And based off of just purely hitting, he was probably a top 10 guy. Not much of a lesson to learn there, except maybe that the information is there. I should probably, or the information that there is a possibility of a top 30 Vlad season is there. Maybe I should account for that a little bit more, but based off of what he had done prior, 65th was maybe even a little high for Vlad.
Yeah, 2023 was just out there.
Yeah, like 2022 and 23 were like, is this a top 100 guy? Like, what's going on? And then this past season, he was a really great player. Last name for me, Willy Adames. I feel like I really hit this one on the head here. He was awesome this year. I had him at 64th. MLB.com, I'm not sure where they had him, but I feel like the Willy Adames pick was pretty solid at 64th. Also, I had Tarek Skubal at 56. So say what you will with that. I feel like that was a pretty fun pick. And a lot higher than I think a lot of people would have had him. I had him above Blake Snell. So I said Eric Skubal is going to have a better year than the reigning Cy Young. But yeah, that'll pretty much do it for me. Do you have anything else before we get out of this one?
I don't.
All
Other
right.
than shout out to you for even making a top 100 list. That's not easy to do.
Yeah, it's not. It's really difficult actually. And while we're on this topic, we're gonna do this again next season. Notice I said where, because Finn will also be making a top 100. We're gonna have an episode where we compare them. We might do an episode similarly to the top 50 episode that I did with Sheldon, where I explained how I came to my rankings. We might do that with each of us. Either way, that'll be later in the off season.
That could
Think
be
January range, probably.
that could be a pretty long one, and we'll iron out kinks and get a no balls official one out.
Yeah, I agree. We'll figure out what that is. Next episode will not be that though. Next episode is actually, we haven't even discussed what the next episode is going to be because we had a special episode coming up with a off-screen guest that's going to be in the next MLB episode. Next episode will be next Wednesday, though. Wednesday the 5th. We will see you guys then. We're signing off.